Hi, my name is Ann Richardson, and I'm an audiobook narrator. I just finished narrating a wonderful book called High Stakes: Why and How to Eat Less Meat by Eleanor Boyle. Eleanor is a writer, a teacher, and a public speaker who is passionate about helping people eat in ways that are good for the environment and good for our well-being. She has a solid academic background with a bachelor's degree in psychology, a PhD in neuroscience, and a master's of science in food policy. But Eleanor is also an entertaining educator who loves to facilitate public discussions on how we can make our food systems healthier. She's spoken at numerous conferences on food, environment, and animal welfare, and at many community venues. Following the publication in 2012 of High Stakes: Why and How to Eat Less Meat, she has made dozens of appearances on radio and TV and has garnered praise for her inclusive, compassionate, and realistic view of how we can all help solve the meat problem. Eleanor, welcome.
Thank you, Anne. It's great to be speaking with you.
And I'm honored as well. Let me start by telling you what a privilege it was for me to narrate High Stakes and to explain why I found your book so intriguing. So a little bit of background on me is that I was born and raised in Nebraska, and many of my friends' families were involved in the livestock industry. We joked about the feedlot that was across the road from the high school and how it gave our sports teams an unfair advantage in the spring. The visiting sports teams would complain of the smell, but to us it was the smell of money. Growing up, it never occurred to me the damage that the meat industry was doing to the environment. And in narrating your book, I was also shocked to find out that that the government subsidizes the wrong end of the animal. This is no longer a joking matter. It's a very serious one. So my first question for you today is, what compelled you to write this book?
There were so many factors that led me to get excited about this topic. Like so many people, I have been excited by what I call the food movement in recent years, in which so many individuals and groups, citizen groups, health organizations, environmental organizations, have come to realize the importance of food, what we eat, where it comes from, and how we produce it, and how production of a lot of food today is in fact problematic for the environment and for health, and all the ways in which it could be done better. So I was excited about that. I got involved in organizations and in what I call the food movement. But I observed that while there were certain topics that a lot of people talked about, the importance of eating local, for example, which is crucial, a lot of people didn't want to talk about meat. And I realized as I talked to more people about it and read more about it, that it is extremely controversial and it brings out a lot of emotions in people. And it's a hot button topic that not everyone wants to deal with. There were certain people who were, for example, vegetarian educators who were telling people that everyone should become a vegetarian. And I came to feel that that wasn't a message that most people could hear. So I decided to write a book that takes a lot of scientific evidence and argues that while people who want to become vegetarian are free to become vegetarian, and there are a lot of arguments for that, anyone can help address some of the environmental and health issues with the ways that we produce meat and the ways that we consume it today, while continuing to eat meat simply by becoming more discerning consumers of animal products. And I felt it was a really positive and a really optimistic message, and a useful one. That's what put me on the road to writing the book.
Well, what excited me was that it was a very palatable message. I mean, like you said, you don't have to go 100% vegetarian. That's a real turnoff for a lot of people. But what you propose in your book is that, you can start going meatless, say, one day a week. There's already a movement like that here in San Francisco. And you can go from there, maybe buying a gallon of organic milk instead of the normal milk. There's a lot of easy to swallow solutions out there that will get you on the road. And that was incredibly appealing. And I'm certain that that has helped keep those walls lower when you begin to speak about a topic like this.
Yeah, yeah. I interviewed a number of people who had things to say that for me have been very memorable. And one man who I quote in the book, who happens to have been from one of the Asian countries, which is relevant because meat consumption has increased so radically and dramatically and quickly in much of Asia over the last couple of decades. And he said to me, when I was a child, we ate meat twice a week. Now I eat it twice a day.
That's amazing.
Having read about the pollution, the greenhouse gases, and a lot of the other environmental and health problems caused by intensive, large-scale, massive production of meat, I was really struck by it. From twice a week to twice a day. Twice a week is fabulous. That if we all ate meat twice a week or more, but not twice a day, we could produce meat in ways that were great for the environment, integrated into agricultural systems, and that were really healthy for all of us. So, as you know, I'm arguing that you can eat meat and absolutely be an environmentalist. You can eat meat and contribute to the solution if we're discerning about it, if we eat less, and here's part of the rub, if we pay more for meat that has been produced, what I call sustainably and compassionately. In other words, not intensively, not in factory farms as much of our meat is produced today. And we're going to have to do things like be willing to pay more, which is tough. But as some food researchers say, most of us could actually afford to pay a little more for food if we moved our priorities a little.
So true.
Yeah.
Now, have you always been a conscientious consumer, or did this grow upon you? And I guess what I really want to know is, how did your family come on board with this? Was it hard for them to compromise on electricity and diets and things like that?
Right. Oh boy. First of all, I was raised by terrific parents who fed us balanced, nutritious meals. Absolutely. But I was also part of probably one of the first generations, just look historically through the 20th century, that had money from working as a teenager and from allowances, in which we could buy our own food and make some of our own food decisions. This was never the case for my parents. Their parents made 3 meals a day for them. By the time it got to us, at school we'd often go off and buy our own lunches. We'd pay for our own fast food. And when kids do the choosing, they're going to choose foods that are high in all those elements that push our biological buttons: fat, salt, and sugar. And so, despite my parents' good modeling, sure, I loved all fast foods, burgers and chips and chocolate bars and you name it, and lots of meat, of course. It was a process for me, and it's been a process over a couple of decades of reading, of asking questions, of speaking to people who don't just do what everybody else is doing, don't just go to the gas station to get their snacks, don't just do what is easiest, but ask what is really best for community, for myself, for society, for sustainability. And it takes changes of habits, and it's not easy to do. I've fallen off the wagon here and there, food-wise, but over time, I have become more conscious. As far as family, well, my extended family runs the entire gamut, from very enthusiastic regular meat eaters to, I guess, what I would call light meat eaters, to vegetarians to vegans. So my extended family has everybody involved. In my immediate family, my husband has been a conscious eater for decades. So in fact, it brought us closer together. It was not a problem at all. But the fact is that when you decide to change how you eat, it is going to affect some of your relationships, and it is going to cause challenges. It just is. And as I say in the book, if you decide to be in the business of telling people they should probably cut back on their meat consumption, some people aren't going to ask you to dinner. I mean, really. I mean, seriously. You can be as welcoming as you want to be. You can be as tolerant and as loving of everyone else's choices as you want to be. But it's not always easy if you decide not to be on the mainstream, to be loved by everyone.
That's very true, very true.
But one of the good things about the Eat Less Meat message is that it really can allow you to eat with everyone. It can allow you to understand and be compassionate toward absolutely everyone, no matter what their choices are. And that's what I really try to be.
Well, it comes through in your writing. I mean, it's like the introduction when I said that your realistic view draws people in. And it really is easier to accept. Yeah, I may have told you earlier, I was walking the dog with one of my friends, and I mentioned I was recording your book, and immediately I got the eye rolls, I'm not going to go vegan. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to fly. And I said, well, that's the beauty of the book. You don't have to go vegan. Start one day a week. And anyway, the discussion went on from there, but I really appreciated your realistic approach. It wasn't all or nothing. Everybody's going to have to take small steps to grow into a more self-conscious and environmental awareness, easy for me to say, state of mind if they're going to tackle this problem. And it may happen sooner than later if we have some of the health crises that were described in your book.
Yeah. When you look at the science describing the massive environmental problems from the way that we produce meat today and the amounts that we produce, and let me just be clear, there are 7 billion people on the planet today. That's human beings. For each of us, there are at least 3 livestock animals on the planet. There are tens of billions of livestock animals on the planet, most of them being produced intensively, all stuffed into buildings, which raises obvious animal welfare and ethical issues, but also produces pollution and greenhouse gas problems that are enormous. And I have people in my life who say that taking a soft approach just isn't enough, that in fact we are going to have to do a lot more than cutting out meat once a week. And frankly, the science suggests that we are going to have to do a lot more. I scoured the literature to see what scientists say is going to be a sustainable amount of meat for people to eat. And there is no easy and quick answer to that. It's going to depend where you live. It's going to depend on a lot of things. But a number of the scientists who have crunched the numbers suggest that we're all probably going to have to, on average, cut our meat consumption in half, which is a lot. Cut our meat consumption in half. But I say that human beings are capable of change. People can change, societies can change. We see so many examples of positive change. Attitudes toward all kinds of previous controversial issues are no longer controversial. There are issues that have been settled. Society moves forward. And individuals, even when faced with habitual behaviors of various kinds, or behaviors such as regular meat eating that have the misapprehension of being considered sort of deep, cultural behaviors that absolutely can't change, of course they can change. In fact, humans can change fairly quickly when they have sufficient reason to do so and when they're given ways to help. And that's one of the things I hope the book does, is not only lay out a lot of the reasons for us to moderate our intake of animal products, but gives us a way to do it. We can serve exactly the same thing to our families each night. Just cut the meat portion in half and make it a side dish. Increase the other dishes. Substitute into meat meals. Substitute some non-meat ingredients so that you cut the amount of meat. Discover some of the fabulous vegetarian dishes, including in cultures that tend traditionally to minimize the meat. Mexican, Chinese, Indian. There are some fairly easy ways that people can move in this direction, I think and I hope.
Well, those are great, and I love the hints and the recipes that you gave in your book. But, this is such a multifaceted issue. There's deforestation, there's greenhouse gases, there's antibiotics, hormones, in addition to the animal welfare, which frankly I feel should be at the top of the list. If somebody wanted to make more of a difference than simply modifying their intake, what would be the single most effective step they could take? For example, would it be writing a senator, or give us some ideas. How can we tackle this problem?
Good, good. Well, really, the first and most important way to tackle all of these problems is to make the commitment to lower your meat intake and to start paying more for the stuff that has been raised locally, sustainably. That's number one. Next, I think that what each individual has to do is think about what moves them the most, because action on the ground, volunteer work, has to feed your soul. Some people are moved by the pollution issues. Other people are moved by the climate change issues. What touches you most, and work in that area? You can join a citizen group that works on those issues. There are fabulous ones in the United States and Canada. Food and Water Watch, Water Keepers Alliance, so many wonderful groups that are taking action on these issues. If that appeals to you, take action in that direction. If you have less time or ability to join a group, sitting at home and simply committing to write a letter even once a month is wonderful. Letters are powerful, especially when people don't write as many letters as they used to. A letter is always taken by a congressperson or a member of parliament, or any official is always taken to represent many more views than simply one person. Write a quick letter saying that you have decided that for reasons of environment, health, and community, and animal welfare, if you like, that we all need to take action on the meat issue, and you expect that person or that group to also take action on it. That can be powerful. So really, I think you have to start with your own eating, because we do it 3 times a day. And from there, move on to whatever feeds your soul and makes you feel like a valued part of the solutions.
That's true. It doesn't make much sense to a lot of people to tackle this issue if they feel they're ineffective. So it certainly makes perfect sense to start at home. Once you have that mastered, or at least you're more accustomed to modifying your dietary intake, then you can jump off the other cliff of writing letters and whatever. And let me take this short opportunity to reinforce to our listeners that with this downloadable audiobook is also a PDF of all of your research, all of those citations in your book. If somebody would feel compelled to look those up and see where you got your facts and your information, that's all in the downloadable PDF that comes with this audiobook. So hopefully some more hints of how to tackle this issue would be in there too. I have to admit I didn't read the appendix. Not my job.
As well, I encourage listeners to look at the book in the downloadable PDF for a fairly comprehensive list of organizations that are working on these issues, the kinds of organizations whose websites they can look at to see what sort of straightforward and simple actions they can take as citizens. And I encourage everyone to look at my website, eleanorboyle.com, and to write to me and ask me for personal advice based on where you live and what your interests are and what you can do. I'd love it.
That's fantastic. So, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Well, a lot of the problems that we humans create by our habits and by our desires are solvable. It's Climate change is a tough one, and we all hope that it, at this point in time, is still soluble. But certainly some of the issues that are, some of the problems that are contributed to by excessive meat production, water pollution, for example, antibiotic resistance. Of course, most of the antibiotics used in North America go straight into livestock. Unnecessary. Almost certainly the major cause of antibiotic resistance. Jurisdictions around the world that have outlawed excessive use of antibiotics in livestock have immediately seen a decrease in antibiotic resistance in their communities, have immediately seen that antibiotics begin working again in medical settings better than they had previously. These problems are soluble by and large. We simply need to make a commitment and shift our habits in ways that I think are doable, and I hope that viewers and listeners find doable.
Well, I certainly do too. Eleanor, thank you so much for joining us. Again, this is Eleanor Boyle, the author of High Stakes, Why and How to Eat Less Meat, and I appreciate you joining us.